Hey everybody, welcome to the Midweek Check-in. Hey, I have a question for you. How do you feel about the book of Proverbs? Many people really like this book, but I gotta say, it's really not my favorite. It's a little too disjointed, a little too simple, a little too short and sweet. But again, that's what people really like about it, because the book of Proverbs is full of things like this. He who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself from calamity. It's very clear. Okay, guard my mouth and my tongue and I will not have calamity. Really simple. A plus B equals C. And we humans love that. Well, again, I love that. I love the wisdom. I love what comes with reading it, but I just don't like sitting down and just reading the book of Proverbs. Until I think about the author. The author of this book is actually King Solomon, who was the third king of Israel, the son of David. Now, one really cool thing about Solomon is this. When he became a king, he sat before the Lord and actually prayed for discernment and wisdom on how to be king over the Israelites. And God actually answered his prayer in this way. He said, "Wow, Solomon," I'm ad-libbing there. "Wow, Solomon, because you are asking this, and you're not asking for riches, and you're not asking for a long life, but you're actually asking for wisdom. I'm going to give you that wisdom, and I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to give you riches, and I'm going to give you many things. Like, you are ultimately going to be known as essentially the best king ever." And with that, Solomon kind of went around and he did some things, and he went a little off track at times. In fact, we can see where he went off track at times in the book of Ecclesiastes. He also wrote that book. So Solomon wrote Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the book of Song of Songs, or the book of Song of Solomon. What I think is really cool is when we take these three books into account by this particular author, who ultimately did have a heart for God. He wanted to follow God, he wanted to serve the people well, and he was really similar to his father David in this way. Not exactly, because like I said, he did kind of go veering off, and not that David didn't go veering off. But when we look at the book of Ecclesiastes, we can see that actually David took what God gave him and he did a whole bunch of crazy things with it. And we see that we can learn from what didn't work for Solomon. The book of Proverbs is all about wisdom and how God gave him wisdom. And basically it's Solomon kind of teaching or training up his sons and telling them how to go and what to do and how to be. But then we also see in the book of Ecclesiastes, like, hey, by the way, don't do all this other stuff. It's very empty. And then we also see in the book of Song of Songs, or the book of Song of Solomon, this deep intimacy and love that ultimately Solomon, I think, felt from God, the presence of God in his life. Or maybe even just this interaction with this wisdom, which he also talked about a lot in the book of Proverbs, this connection. And ultimately, this whole being like the bride of Christ. Like when we look at the New Testament, when we take the book of Song of Songs or Song of Solomon and we move it into the New Testament, we are the bride of Christ. And that idea of that depth of intimacy with God can only be met by him, right? So we see this from Solomon. He's got so many really awesome, wise things to say. And when I think about him in that way, when I think about him and the way that he went before the Lord and he asked for this thing and God blessed him. And then he went from there and he kind of taught us all these different things that are in the Bible. I can kind of get behind reading the book of Proverbs. So we do it every single week. In our Lectio Divina, it is ultimately in there every single week. We read a section of Proverbs. So what do you think about Proverbs? What's your favorite part? Do you like it? Are you like me, or you're like, I don't really like to read it, but of course I like the wisdom that comes from it? And can you connect to King Solomon and the way that the Lord revealed himself to him in these three different ways, in these three very different books? The book of Proverbs, the book of Ecclesiastes, and the book of Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon. Think about it this week, you guys. And until next week, make sure you continue reading, getting in your word, connecting with the Lord in this way. It's really good and awesome and rich stuff. And these are just three books that are ways that we can do that. So go do that this week, you guys. All right, I'll see you next time.